The Galactic Empire had grown complacent in its conquest of worlds. Stretching across vast reaches of space, it boasted dominion over countless planets, each one subdued by its ruthless military and elite hunting teams. These hunters, warriors bred for the thrill of pursuing the galaxy's most dangerous creatures, were legends in their own right. Led by Supreme Hunter Kaldar, they took pride in cataloging every ferocious beast brought low by their plasma rifles and energy nets. No predator, no matter how savage, had ever withstood the Empire's might. Earth, however, was seen as a joke. When the backwater planet was first discovered, the Empire's xenobiologists had dismissed it as unworthy of attention. A world teeming with primitive creatures, lions, tigers, bears, none of which compared to the apex predators the hunters were used to. The Mantacrocs of Gamma-4, a winged reptile capable of tearing through armored ships, was a worthy challenge. The venomous Gorgorath from Centauri Prime, a massive, acid-spewing beast, had claimed the lives of several hunters before it was subdued. Compared to these monsters, Earth's wildlife seemed laughable. Wolves. Supreme Hunter Kaldar snorted, reviewing the latest scouting reports. "You bring me reports of wolves?" The biologist presenting the findings stood nervously in Kaldar's chambers. "Sir, the wolves of Earth appear to exhibit a unique intelligence. Their pack behavior." "Pack behavior?" Kaldar interrupted, his voice dripping with disdain. "We've crushed the hive swarms of Araki's V. We've tamed the rage beasts of Jintar. And you expect me to be impressed by wolves?" The biologist faltered but pressed on. "Their intelligence, sir, is far beyond what we've seen in other creatures from Earth. Their cunning organized. They hunt as a unit, plan ambushes." "Enough!" Kaldar snapped, waving a dismissive hand. "Earth's predators are no more than fodder. We'll hunt them to prove our superiority. But do not expect me to be entertained by the likes of wolves." Kaldar's arrogance was well earned. The galaxy's deadliest beast had fallen to his hand, and his team of hunters, seasoned warriors trained to outthink and outmaneuver any prey, were undefeated. They had spent years perfecting their craft, honing their skills with advanced technology that gave them every advantage. No predator, no matter how fearsome, had ever challenged them, and no planet, no matter how hostile, had ever resisted the Empire's grasp. Earth would be no different, Kaldar thought. It would fall just as easily as all the others. The hunters descended on Earth with little fanfare. They chose a remote area for their hunt, a vast wilderness filled with dense forests and towering mountains. The ideal terrain for testing Earth's so-called apex predators. Kaldar's team laughed as they set up their base of operations, each hunter eager to claim a new trophy from this primitive world. "This will be over quickly," one hunter boasted, checking his rifle's energy levels. "I'll have a lion's head mounted in my quarters by sundown." "Wolves," another hunter said with a chuckle. "They'll probably roll over and beg once they see us." Kaldar allowed the banter, though his mind was already on the hunt. Despite his outward confidence, something about the wolves had piqued his interest. He had reviewed the biologist's reports, noting the wolves' tendency to operate in packs, their ability to plan and execute complex ambushes. It was primitive, yes, but there was something different about them. But different or not, they were still Earth animals. Creatures that had never faced an enemy as powerful as the Galactic Empire. His hunters would make short work of them. "Move out," Kaldar commanded, his voice cutting through the casual chatter. His hunters snapped to attention, each of them armed with the latest in Imperial technology, tracking drones, heat sensors, and rifles designed to kill anything that moved. The hunt began. As the team ventured deeper into the wilderness, the atmosphere shifted. The once confident hunters now moved with a heightened awareness. Something about the forest felt off. The trees loomed larger than expected, their dense canopies blocking out the sunlight, casting long shadows over the forest floor. And it was quiet, unnervingly so. No birds, no rustling leaves, just the sound of their own footsteps. Kaldar's eyes narrowed. He had learned long ago to trust his instincts, and they were telling him something was wrong. The wolves were out there, watching, waiting. He could feel it. "Drones up," he ordered. "Let's get eyes on them." A swarm of drones buzzed to life, shooting into the sky and spreading out across the forest. Their sensors swept the area, scanning for heat signatures. For several moments, the screens remained blank, showing only the cold expanse of the wilderness. Then a flicker. "There," one of the hunters said, pointing to the screen. A small group of heat signatures appeared, moving quickly through the trees. "Wolves." Kaldar smiled. "Found you." The team moved in, weapons ready, confidence returning. They were the hunters, after all. The wolves were just animals, primitive, predictable. They would fall like every other creature that had dared stand against the Empire. But as they closed in on their quarry, something unexpected happened. The wolves disappeared. One moment, they were there, clear on the drone sensors. The next, they were gone, vanished into thin air. "Where did they go?" a hunter asked, scanning the trees. Kaldar's smile faded. "They're watching us," he murmured. Suddenly, a low howl echoed through the trees, a sound that sent a shiver down the spines of even the most seasoned hunters. It was a warning, a challenge. And for the first time in his career, Kaldar felt something he hadn't felt in a long, long time. Doubt. The hunt commenced under a crisp, silent sky. The Galactic Empire's hunters advanced deeper into the wilderness, their sophisticated weapons at the ready, confidence radiating from every step. Supreme Hunter Kaldar led the charge, his sharp eyes scanning the darkened forest ahead, heat sensors strapped to his arm. The drones buzzed overhead, their mechanical hum the only sound in the eerie silence. "There's something off about this place," one of the hunters muttered, his voice tinged with unease. He was the youngest of the group, fresh from his first successful hunt on Jintar, where he had helped capture a massive raptor beast. The bravado he had shown earlier was now tempered by caution. Kaldar silenced him with a sharp glance. "Keep moving. We're the predators here, not them." Yet, the forest seemed to close in around them, the trees thick with shadows that shifted unnervingly. The wolves hadn't been spotted again since their initial heat signatures flickered on the drone's displays. It was as if they had vanished into the earth itself. "They're using the terrain against us," Kaldar muttered to himself, his mind racing. Wolves on Earth had been classified as pack hunters, intelligent and strategic, but primitive in comparison to the galaxy's apex predators. Still, Kaldar couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. This hunt should have been over by now. The squad moved cautiously, scanning every inch of the terrain. The temperature was dropping, and fog began to creep between the trees, swirling around their feet. Kaldar gritted his teeth. Wolves weren't known for engaging directly. They struck when their prey was at its weakest, often under the cover of night or when a target was isolated. He knew they were being watched, hunted, even, but he still couldn't figure out how these wolves could evade their technology so effectively. A sudden rustling broke the tense silence. Kaldar's head snapped toward the sound, his weapon raised. The other hunters followed suit, tightening their formation. From the shadows, a single wolf emerged, its silver coat catching the fading light. It stood still, staring at the group with unnerving calm, its golden eyes gleaming. "There it is," one hunter whispered, raising his plasma rifle. "Wait," Kaldar barked, holding up a hand. Something about the wolf's demeanor unsettled him. This wasn't fear or aggression. It was calculation. The wolf turned and trotted away, disappearing into the trees. Kaldar frowned, his instincts prickling. It was too easy. The wolf wanted them to follow. "Stay close," he ordered, moving forward. "We've been underestimated before. We won't make the same mistake." They followed the wolf's trail deeper into the forest, the fog thickening. Every few hundred yards, a single wolf would appear, watching them for a moment before vanishing again. It was clear now. The wolves were leading them somewhere, deeper into unknown territory. The hunters, normally so sure of their control, were being manipulated. But Kaldar wasn't ready to admit it. His pride, his absolute belief in his superiority, drove him forward. Soon the trees thinned, revealing a narrow clearing. The hunters paused at the edge, their weapons at the ready. The air was thick with tension. Kaldar's eyes swept the area, scanning for any sign of movement, any trap the wolves might have laid. But the clearing was empty, just grass and rock, the fog swirling lazily through the air. Then came the first howl, low, deep, and echoing. It resonated from the surrounding trees, followed by another and another. The hunters' nerves tightened. They could feel it now. They weren't hunting wolves anymore. They were surrounded. "Circle up," Kaldar ordered, his voice sharp. The hunters moved quickly, forming a defensive ring, weapons pointed outward, scanning the treeline. The howling intensified, a chorus of chilling calls that echoed from every direction. The wolves remained unseen, their movements invisible, and that only heightened the growing dread in Kaldar's chest. His instincts screamed at him to retreat, but he pushed the thought aside. He was Supreme Hunter Kaldar, leader of the Empire's finest hunters. They wouldn't be outwitted by mere earth creatures. Then, without warning, the wolves struck. They came from the shadows like ghosts, their movements impossibly fast and coordinated. The first hunter didn't even have time to scream before a pair of wolves lunged from the fog, teeth flashing as they tore him to the ground. Blood sprayed across the clearing. The drones tried to lock onto the attackers, but the wolves were too quick, vanishing back into the mist before any plasma shock could connect. "Hold the line!" Kaldar roared, firing into the fog. His shot went wide, searing through empty air. Another hunter fell, taken down by a pack that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. The wolves were relentless. They hit hard and fast, retreating into the fog after each strike, leaving chaos in their wake. For all their advanced technology, the hunters couldn't adapt. Their equipment, designed for tracking large beasts in open terrain, was nearly useless against these silent, agile predators. Kaldar realized with growing horror that they weren't dealing with animals acting on instinct. The wolves were using strategy, hurting them, isolating them, exploiting every weakness. His squad was falling apart, panic seeping into their once confident movements. Another howl cut through the night, closer this time, followed by the sickening sound of flesh tearing and a hunter's final, gurgled scream. "We need to fall back," one of the remaining hunters shouted, desperation in his voice. Kaldar clenched his fists, refusing to give the order. He was Supreme Hunter, master of the hunt. He wouldn't retreat, not from wolves. But even he could see the truth now. The wolves weren't just intelligent. They were winning. Kaldar raised his arm, about to give the order to fall back, when a shadow moved at the edge of his vision. He spun, but too late. A massive alpha wolf, larger and more menacing than any they had seen before, lunged from the fog, knocking him off his feet. The world spun as Kaldar hit the ground hard, his weapon skidding out of reach. He looked up into the eyes of the alpha, golden, fierce, and utterly unafraid. For the first time in his life, Kaldar felt real fear. Kaldar staggered to his feet, his heart pounding as he locked eyes with the alpha wolf. The creature stood tall, muscles rippling under its thick fur, teeth bared in a silent snarl. It radiated power, confidence, qualities that Kaldar had always seen in himself. But now, as the alpha wolf stared him down, he realized that for the first time, he wasn't the apex predator. The remaining hunters formed a protective circle around him, fear etched across their faces. The fog hung heavily in the air, swirling around them like a living thing, thick with the stench of blood. Half their squad was dead, torn apart by the wolves' brutal, calculated strikes. The drones were useless, their sensors scrambled by the dense mist and erratic movements of the pack. Kaldar's mind raced, torn between rage and the creeping edge of despair. His entire life had been defined by triumph, by standing over the corpses of the galaxy's deadliest beasts. He had conquered worlds, tamed creatures that would send most beings running in terror. But here on this backwater planet, These wolves had turned the hunt against him. "We can still win this," Kaldar growled, grabbing his fallen weapon from the ground. His pride, his unshakable belief in the Empire's superiority, refused to let him surrender. A howl echoed from the treeline, sending a fresh wave of tension through the hunters. The wolves were regrouping, preparing for another assault. Kaldar scanned the forest, his eyes darting from shadow to shadow, but the fog made it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. "Fall back to the ship," one of his hunters shouted, his voice shaking with panic. "We can regroup, get reinforcements." Kaldar snarled. "No, we stand and fight." He had never retreated in his life, and he wouldn't start now, not in the face of mere animals. But these weren't just animals. A voice whispered at the back of his mind. These were something more, something dangerous. The wolves struck again. This time, they came from every direction, a whirlwind of teeth and claws. The hunters opened fire, their plasma rifles lighting up the night, but it was no use. The wolves moved too quickly, slipping through the gaps in their defenses, dragging hunters down into the mud. Kaldar fired wildly, trying to keep them at bay. But for every wolf that fell, two more appeared, their eyes glowing in the darkness. He heard the screams of his men, saw their bodies torn apart in flashes of movement. The disciplined unit that had once stood invincible now crumbled under the relentless assault. Kaldar felt a heavy weight slam into his side, knocking him to the ground. He rolled, barely avoiding the snapping jaws of another wolf. He scrambled to his feet, blood pounding in his ears, vision blurred. His weapon had been knocked from his hands again. It lay just out of reach, glinting in the moonlight, but the alpha wolf was there, standing between him and the rifle. Kaldar hesitated, his instincts screaming at him to run, but his pride held him in place. The alpha wolf watched him with those piercing, intelligent eyes, as if it knew exactly what Kaldar was thinking. Without warning, the wolf lunged. Kaldar dodged to the side, barely avoiding the creature's deadly teeth. He dove for his weapon, his fingers brushing the cold metal, but before he could grab it, the alpha was on him again. It slammed into him with bone-crushing force, knocking the wind from his lungs. Kaldar hit the ground hard, the impact rattling through his body. The alpha wolf stood over him, its breath hot on his face. Kaldar reached for his knife, but the wolf pinned his arm down with a single, massive paw. He was trapped, completely at the mercy of the beast he had so arrogantly dismissed. The wolf growled low in its throat, eyes gleaming with something more than just animal instinct. It was intelligence, cold, calculating, and utterly dominant. Kaldar, the hunter who had never known defeat, stared into the eyes of his conqueror. In that moment he knew this was the end. With a savage snarl, the alpha wolf lunged, its teeth sinking into Kaldar's throat. Pain exploded through him, but it was brief. Darkness quickly followed, swallowing him whole. The supreme hunter was dead. The remaining hunters, those who hadn't already fallen, watched in horror as their leader was torn apart. Panic gripped them. Without Kaldar's iron command, their once coordinated efforts collapsed into chaos. They fired wildly into the fog, desperate to drive the wolves back, but it was no use. The pack had tasted blood, and they wouldn't stop now. "Retreat!" one hunter screamed, dropping his weapon and sprinting toward the ship. The others followed, abandoning the hunt, their pride shattered. They were no longer hunters. They were prey. The wolves pursued them through the trees, silent and swift, picking them off one by one. By the time the few surviving hunters reached the clearing where their ship was parked, the pack had claimed nearly all of them. Those who made it aboard quickly sealed the hatch, their breath ragged, eyes wide with terror. As the ship lifted off, the surviving hunters dared a final glance out the viewport. Below, the wolves gathered at the edge of the forest, their golden eyes gleaming in the moonlight. The alpha stood at the forefront, watching as the ship ascended into the sky, victorious. Back on the Empire's homeworld, the news of the hunt's failure spread quickly. Earth, once seen as an insignificant planet, was reclassified. The official reports called it a hostile environment, a world where even the most advanced technology was no match for its predators. The Empire would never hunt there again. The wolves, though, remained, roaming the wilderness as silent, deadly rulers of their domain. They had faced the galaxy's greatest hunters and won, and from that day on, Earth was left to its killers.